Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day, but if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. tytnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. Oh, hello there, how are you? I'm Cenk Uygur. I host a show called The Young Turks. That's the one you're watching right now. Okay, fun show ahead for you guys. Is Twitter right-wing? Interesting, which then might explain why they allow the alt-right and racist, etc., to reign all over Twitter in a couple of different ways. And a very famous actor makes that charge to some degree. So anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Scott Pruitt's in a world of trouble as usual, which of course makes Trump like him more. We will talk about that. And then huge sexual harassment and actually worse, sexual assault and rape charges that are not about a Republican official, but that do relate to him, whether he covered it up or not. That's coming up a little bit later in the show. But I've got a chow segment to start for you guys, and then Anna's gonna come in. So let's do our 2 fun little stories. Let's go over here. We were gonna do that one second. Yeah, thank you. Okay, new poll out from Quinnipiac about Donald Trump. It's got some really bad news for him. It's got a little bit of good news for him, which I find to be super frustrating. We'll get to that in a second. And then it ends with disaster. So it's a fun roller coaster ride. Let's go on that ride. So first, easy peasy. First question is, do you approve of him or don't you? And the answer is a resounding no, we do not. 55-40, Americans disapprove of Donald Trump. From time to time, Donald Trump brags about this because he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. My approval numbers are up. And they did go up to one poll at one time had him at 45%. That's really bad. You're supposed to be above 50%, and if you're below 50%, it's underwater, and that means your presidency is heading in the wrong direction. But for Trump, it was never headed in the right direction. But he had gone into some of the polls into the low 40s, and he started to high step, which is hilarious, right? But now he's back down to 40, and he's gonna keep on going down. He's been lower, and he will be lower. But understand the context, because everybody thinks the regular rules of politics and the world have been suspended since Donald Trump is president, and that the president doesn't have to be popular, and that it won't hurt his party, and it won't hurt him if he's going up for a re-election. Yes, it will. Math still exists. He was just running against an incredibly unpopular candidate last time. These are disastrous numbers. All right, but it gets way worse. So, is he honest? No, 58 to 38% say he is not honest. That's a gigantic difference and obviously true. That number should be way higher, by the way. I mean, that 38%. Have you ever heard Donald Trump? But still, good number overall for people who are rational. 55 to 43 say he does not have good leadership skills. Every one of these numbers should be near 100%, but yes, overall good. Most people get it. He's not a good manager. He's an idiot. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Hold for that number, but they don't think he's a good manager, okay? 55 to 43 say that he does not care about the average American. Tell you, man, for any president, these are terrible numbers. 62 to 34 don't believe him when he say he's a very stable genius. They say he is not level-headed. 62 to 34. Also not a good sign for the president of the United States and the commander-in-chief if by almost a 30-point margin the country thinks you are not level-headed or stable, let alone a genius. But again, hold for that depressing fact on what people think of his intelligence. Okay, 60 to 37% say he does not share their values. Disaster on top of disaster. One last one of the disastrous sort before we get to the worst of the worst and the best of the best. 62 to 36 say he does not provide the US with moral leadership. To which I say, of course he doesn't. What part of Donald Trump is moral? Are you kidding me? And even his own supporters. Now, a lot of them, that 36% is pretty much immovable. Like, oh, Donald Trump is super moral. On what planet? But it doesn't matter because overwhelming majority of the country say, no, he does not provide moral leadership. That's preposterous. Even some of his own supporters go, I support him, but he does not provide moral leadership. Okay, now here's the 2 depressing ones. 63 to 32% say that he is a strong person. Oh, Democrats, you're the worst. Now, why do you think Donald Trump keeps talking about how great he is? You know, I have the best words. In fact, of course, legendarily,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
I'm like a smart person. He put out a tweet saying, I'm a very stable genius. There's two things that I'm really good at in life. One is being mentally stable. Who says that? Only a lunatic says that. If someone said that to you at a bar, you would run for your life. Hey, how you doing? Did you know one of the top two qualities I have is that I'm very mentally stable? No one would stay at the bar, right? He's the president. Anyway, and his second great quality he claimed was that he was really smart. Now, why does a person act out like that? Because they're deeply insecure. He never makes fun of himself. He's never self-effacing because he's afraid that people might find out it's true. He does nothing but insane bragging because he's deeply insecure. You know why? Because he's not actually strong. And the minute anyone strong shows up, he cowers like every bully there is. But the Democrats are so pathetically weak that the American people have him at 31% advantage on strong person. And by the way, don't get me wrong, I get why. He does bully people and he does come out and is super aggressive. So I'm not shocked by that number. Of course I get it. I just can't stand the Democrats that they couldn't bring that number down. Let me add a Moss, okay? Now, the one that's really depressing. 57 to 39 say that he is in fact intelligent. Okay, forget the Democratic Party. They're the worst already. Those establishment people, Hillary Clinton, et cetera, they don't know how to fight him, right? But I despair of the American people that you listen to a guy who says,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
And you think, oh yeah, because smart people go around all the time saying, I'm like a smart person. He said that 2 different times, and then he tweeted it. He wrote out, I'm like a smart person. To be fair, so did Einstein. No, he didn't. Einstein never said that because he was actually smart. How do you look at Donald Trump and think he's smart? And so the sickness that unfortunately has befallen this country is that if you're rich or pretending to be rich, people will say, oh, well, he must be strong, he must be smart. I mean, he's rich, he must be smart. He inherited $200 million from his dad. If you inherited $200 million from your dad, you would also have a lot of money. And what's frustrating is that people will be like, oh yeah, Bob, he's really smart, man. Did you see the way that his dad died and gave him the money? Trump bankrupted himself 6 times, which I'm pretty sure you wouldn't do if your dad gave you $200 million. But by a margin of nearly 20 points, 18 points, Americans think that he is intelligent. Oh, that is so sad. Now, I told you there'd be bad news for him, good news for him. We were through all that. Now comes the truly disastrous news for him. According to this poll, Quinnipiac poll, very respected organization, President Trump is racist. 49% of voters say, while 47% say that he is not racist. That's an unbelievable number. Now, if you're out there and you don't like Trump and you know all the things that he's done, Central Park 5, the birther conspiracy, the constant dehumanization of Latinos, Muslims, et cetera, you think that number should be higher. But look, guys, not everybody lives in your bubble or in your context or in your particular group, right? For a majority of Americans, or at least a strong plurality of Americans, for 49% of Americans to say that the president of the United States is racist, for most Americans, that's a very, very heavy word. And I think that we use it appropriately on Trump and on others who actually discriminate against people of different races. That's kind of the definition. But the average American is very reluctant to use that word. So for 49% to say, yes, the president is racist, that's amazing and disastrous for Trump. I mean, how do you vote for a guy if you think he's racist? If you think he's such a bad guy that he hates other people of other races? So this whole idea that, oh, Trump is above the laws of physics and math is simply not anywhere near true. This guy is deeply, deeply unpopular. And one last thing that's important for the country is that voters say by a margin of 55 to 39 that Trump has emboldened people who hold racist beliefs to express those beliefs publicly. That's a 14-point margin. for Americans saying, not only is the president racist, but whether I think he is one or not, he's definitely emboldening racists. So, look, some folks might look at that and still go, yeah, I know, but if you're rich, my paycheck went up. If you're not, it didn't, but maybe one day it will. Or, yeah, he's racist, but so am I. And a lot of those people will vote for him. But I can't imagine that it's a huge percentage of those people that'll vote for him. So he starts out in a hole, if he's around in 2020, that is very hard to climb out of. If half the country thinks you're a racist, it's pretty hard to get elected. But on the other hand, probably a good number of those folks thought that even before the election. And the Democratic establishment found a way to lose to him anyway. I wonder how they poll on intelligent. Probably not very high. Okay. Now, let me go to a story about progressives. Kaniela Ing is a wonderful progressive out of Hawaii. I've told you guys about him before. When he was 23 years old, he started to run for office. He was a trainer at a gym, and he'd work all morning at the gym, and then he'd go and knock on doors. He lived in a district, the only district in Hawaii that was actually heavily Republican, represented at the state level by a Tea Party Republican, and that incumbent would win comfortably, and nobody thought he had any chance at all. Of course, nobody was paying any mind to Kaniela Ing, and he went and knocked on every door 3 times. I mean, the work ethic of this guy is unreal. He shocked Hawaii by winning that district and winning it by a large margin. Well, here we are again. Now he's running for the United States House of Representatives from Hawaii in the 1st District, and he finds himself in a significant deficit and not a lot of time to make it up. He is now polling 4th in that race. So there are 3 largely establishment Democrats in front of him. One Democrat who was a Republican a year ago. Why don't we elect Democrats for Democratic positions? Now, of course, people are beginning to write him off again. Well, he can't win. The election's on August 11th, so that's only 5 weeks from now. And he's in 4th place. And look, I'll give you more stats that are not positive for him. He's 18 points behind. So I'm gonna do something crazy here. I am predicting a victory for Kaniela Ing. Even though he's in 4th place right now, I predict he will finish in 1st place 5 weeks from now. Now, why am I predicting this? Because I believe Kaniela Ing is an excellent candidate, and I think excellent candidates show their true mettle in times like this. I believe that he has the right attitude in terms of working hard and making sure that you actually reach the voters, not through having more money. He is a just Democrat. He does not take any corporate PAC money. But by actually going and knocking on doors, making phone calls, believing in your volunteers, believing in your staff. Number 2, I think that progressive issues do exceedingly well if you do reach those voters. I know through other campaigns of Just Democrats across the country, when you actually get someone on the phone and you tell them Just Democratic positions, which are deeply progressive, Medicare for all, getting all money out of politics, higher minimum wage, hey, college education for your kids, American dream, they can live it too. It's not just for the rich. The amount that moves people, just giving them one position is stunning. Sometimes it moves voters to a 6-to-1 margin in favor of the progressive candidate. So then that leads us to point number 3. Yes, he's got the winning issues, he's got the winning attitude, but can he reach enough voters without having the money advantage? Well, that's where I think I'm encouraged by what Just Democrats have done in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's race and what we have learned in all of these races through the wins and the losses. And I believe that they now have a winning strategy that can reach those voters. So we're gonna find out if I'm right, but when you put those 3 things together, even though he is significantly down now and in 4th place, I believe he will close that gap and he will win this race. The great thing about this is we get to find out together. So we will continue to cover that race, and we will have it for you on the night of August 11th when we cover elections live. We will cover his. And you get to find out if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Does he close that 18-point lead? Can he pull it off? I think politics is an amazing thing. And I know how far down Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was. She at one point was down 35 points and she came back and won. I believe, and as you saw with your own eyes, I think there is very good reason to believe. Now, if you want to support Kaniela Ing, here are his links. KanielaIng.com is his website. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, just go to the description box, click on the links down below to volunteer, because that is what wins elections. We have seen it with our own eyes. We've done it, and you guys have participated in that. And then small dollar donations carry these progressive candidates because they are the uncorrupted. Takes no corporate PAC money. So it's on us together to make this happen. Luckily, we've done it before. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break, come back with scandal after scandal about Republicans. We'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. Well, hey, how you doing, Anna?
Hey.
All right, good to see you.
Thanks.
All right, Batman Swaggins writes in on YouTube Super Chat, just became a member on a note you made yesterday. I know why the media hates AMLO, that's Obrador, who just won the Mexican elections. He announced that he will not pay the 10 billion pesos the current president paid the media to promote his image. So that's true in America as well, but we just do it slightly different, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently in Mexico, and I didn't know about this, the president pays the media to promote him, which doesn't quite seem right, okay? Mm-hmm. But in America, our politicians raise billions of dollars from private interests and then hand it over to television stations in the form of TV ads. And then the TV stations then, funny enough, say those politicians are awesome and money in politics is not a problem. Funny how that works. Corruption either way. But thank you for joining us, Batman. I like that you heeded our signal. TYT.com/join to become a member, support progressive causes, and get all the progressive shows. I'll tell you about that in a sec. Jim Lawrence says on YouTube Super Chat, why don't we primary vulnerable Republicans too? Actually, there's a group called Brand New Congress, and that was their idea. Primary both Democrats and Republicans. I think it's a hard thing to pull off because I don't want anything to do with the Republicans. But I hear you, brother. Okay, Mirai Hayashi says, Cenk, don't jinx the election results.
Damn.
Look.
Using your name as a verb.
That happened. Okay, so look, guys, the Kaniela Ing thing, if you notice, I didn't go on the record. I know that I'm the only one who cares about this, but to predict the victories of any of the other Justice Democrats, and not even Ocasio, right? And he's so far down, why bother doing it? Again, we're gonna get to find out if I'm right or wrong, and it's not an easy thing at all to come from fourth to finish in first with only 5 weeks left to go, right? Because I wanna show you guys that I believe that there is a way to win these elections, and we'll see if I'm right about that. And so it's not Monday morning quarterbacking, it's telling you ahead of time. All right, I Am Sock says 49% think he's racist, referring to Trump. That means there's a lot of people on the right who are admitting that he's a racist and like him because he's a racist. I don't know about that last part, but it is important that you've got Republicans now saying, obviously some percentage of them going, yeah, I know, he is racist, right? And 90% of them still do support him, to be fair to I Am Sock. Last one, Captain Jiggle Pants says, if Trump wasn't born rich, he'd never be rich without a lucky lotto ticket. Does anyone think that moron? And the answer is unfortunately yes, because we're so blinded by the current, like if you have money now, you must be awesome. But you watch that guy on TV and you think that guy would have figured out how to run a business? He couldn't make money running a casino. It's amazing, it's amazing. All right, anyway, so I want to tell you guys about some new shows that we're launching on YouTube TV. One is called Reasonably Sure.
Best show name to ever exist.
It's with Michael Schur.
Best show name to ever exist.
Okay, I love that name. I love that name. We had a huge debate about whether to do that name or not. I voted yes. Luckily, I have a lot of votes here. Anyway, Smart Mouth is a great show. Two women having both fun and political and current events conversations. Rebel Headquarters is now going on to YouTube TV. We've been doing that show for months, but now the YouTube TV audience gets to see those great progressive candidates and issues as well. And the Jimmy Dore Show, also going on YouTube TV as well. So if you want to get YouTube TV, go to tyt.com/ YouTube TV. Now, obviously on YouTube TV, it's not just the Young Turks, who are one of about 50 channels or so. World Cup's on there, NBA Championships, ESPN.
No Filter is on there.
Yeah, and obviously.
One of the best shows on the network.
Damage Report by John Idarola.
Also a great show.
Okay. And all the other news channels are there. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, CBS, NBC. They're all there. And it's, I think, $40, which is way lower than you're capable. So what's next, Anna?
All right.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio is facing some serious accusations. Back in April, Ohio State University launched an investigation into sexual assault and molestation allegations that were against a former doctor at the university. It was an athletics doctor who actually is no longer alive. He committed suicide years ago. But these accusations were directed toward Dr. Strauss. And the argument is that Representative Jim Jordan was an assistant wrestling coach at the university at the time. He knew what was going on and refused to do anything about it. And today, denies ever knowing anything about it. So let me make the case, and this is based on an investigation done by NBC News. Former wrestlers actually spoke to NBC and are now cooperating with investigators in this case. Now, Representative Jim Jordan, the Republican congressman from Ohio, is being accused by former wrestlers he coached more than 2 decades ago at Ohio State University of failing to stop the team doctor from molesting them and other students. I also want to be clear, this doctor not only treated athletes from the wrestling team, but from several other teams at the university as well, across many different sports. We'll get to that in just a minute. The university announced that it was investigating accusations that Dr. Richard Strauss, who died in 2005, abused team members when he was the team doctor from the mid-1970s to late 1990s. So I'm gonna have the specific allegations by former wrestlers in just a minute, but Cenk, I wanted you to jump in and,
Yeah, so first off, I'm a little surprised by their naivete on this. I don't mean about the sexual harassment, about Jim Jordan denying the charges, that he knew anything about the doctor abusing the kids. One former wrestler said, "It's sad for me to hear that he's denying this. I don't know why he would unless it's a cover-up." Now, I want you to understand this context, and this is both in favor of Jim Jordan and against him. Almost all the wrestlers that talked to NBC News said that they really liked Jim Jordan.
That they loved him, yeah.
And so I can't see that. I think Jim Jordan's a terrible guy, and I don't agree with him politically, but it's not just that. I think as he goes to destroy the rule of law in this country, he's one of the most conservative members of Congress and one of the most loyal to Donald Trump, and in fact attacks his political opponents with vengeance. And so
he's also the founder of the House Freedom Caucus, which is the most conservative group of Congress members.
Yeah, but to be fair to him, and we always report the story as it is, these former wrestlers say that they liked him, they loved him. One of them said, "I love Jimmy to death." They said they had great conversations with him back when he was the assistant coach. So that's part of the story. But they all then turn around and go, but why is he lying about this? That we knew, everybody knew that the doctor was molesting the kids, and Jim Jordan knew. In fact, apparently, according to one of the former wrestlers, Jordan even said he'd kill him if he tried anything with him. So he told Strauss, I'll kill you if you try anything with me. But the kids, they're fair game. Have at it, Hoss. Now look, to be fair, he didn't say that last part, but that goes to the naivete of the former wrestlers, which my heart goes out to them. But they're like, why is Jim Jordan lying about this? Guys, if he admitted it, he'd have to say, yeah, I'm a really conservative guy who runs on family values, and I knew those kids were being molested, and I did nothing about it.
Right.
Well, that's devastating.
And it would be devastating for anyone in any profession, right? Especially as a public figure, to admit that you were complicit in what was going on. So let me give you some of the details of the accusations and what these former wrestlers had to say about Representative Jordan. So Mike DiSabato is one of the former wrestlers. He's one of the more outspoken individuals who, by the way, reached out to Representative Jordan. And there's evidence of an email where he reached out to him and asked him to participate or cooperate with this investigation, to really speak out. And Representative Jordan did not respond to it and has denied ever knowing anything about these accusations. So here's what DiSabato said. I consider Jim Jordan a friend, but at the end of the day, he is absolutely lying if he says he doesn't know what was going on. Another former wrestler who wished to remain anonymous told NBC News, I love Jimmy to death. It was a head scratcher to me why he would say he didn't know anything. Doc used to take showers with the team even though he didn't do any workouts, and everybody used to snicker about how you go into his office for a sore shoulder and he tells you to take your pants down. Okay, so I want to stop for a moment. One of the things that really stood out to me from these interviews with former wrestlers was how pretty much everyone acknowledged what was going on, but the athletes were afraid to speak out. Many of the athletes received scholarships to go to that university because of their skills and their talents, and they were afraid of having that scholarship taken away from them, so they didn't speak out. But there was just this weird environment of, yeah, it's going on, we're gonna joke around about it rather than address it. And I mean, it was a different time, but still, it's kind of incredible that these kids were being, these students were being molested and everyone knew.
So there was as much as 1,500 to 2,000 athletes over 15 different sports who might have been molested by this guy. What's shocking to me, and I lived through that time, it was, I was alive in the 1970s to the 1990s, and I played sports in that time. Apparently it was super commonplace, and I guess I'm super lucky that I didn't draw the wrong card, right? That, oh, well, hey, if one of the adults wants to molest the kids, well, what are you gonna do? That's Dr. Strauss. They'd say, I came in for a sore shoulder, and he'd say, take your pants down, and he'd feel their penis. What? And apparently, now to be fair, some people did do something about it. The head coach Hellickson reported him to the administrators, and he warned the doctor to steer clear of his wrestlers. So some adults did the right thing, but apparently administrators didn't do anything because Dr. Strauss kept working there for decades. What are they thinking? Today, it seems unimaginable. I bet if you told me back then, I would have found it unimaginable back then.
Right.
But apparently a lot of people in power, their assumption was, and that is why this cultural shift now is, I think, so terrific. Their assumption back then was, if you're in power, you can do whatever you want, and there's never any consequences. So in fact, Anna, the most shocking part of the story to me was not about Jim Jordan, was not about the doctor, because we know Dr. Larry Nassar, and that's part of the reason why these kids came forward. They saw what he had done to the girls in gymnastics, and so they got emboldened to come forward and tell their stories because they didn't want it to happen to other people. So we know that that happens from time to time. But apparently at 3:30 p.m. when the athletes would start taking showers, not just Dr. Nassar, but this is according to NBC News, university professors, administrators, and others would show up in the shower stalls just as the athletes were arriving. What?
Yeah, I know.
Like, so this was a thing. So like professors and different people like, oh, the young boys are in the showers. Let's all randomly head to the showers at 3:30 in the afternoon to take a shower in the middle of the day with naked boys.
So
what?
So by the way, they're incredibly young. They're not boys. They're over 18. So they're considered men, but still they're young men that are, according to what they're alleging, who are being abused by people in positions of power at this university. And so for the longest time, they didn't speak out because they felt like they couldn't. And because of the whole Larry Nassar case, they realized, wait, maybe there could be justice. And so I'm glad that they spoke out. But you're right, Cenk, like that kind of shocked me as well, because it shows you, if it's proven to be true, how insanely widespread this kind of abuse is.
And so Hellickson, the coach, talked to the doctor and he's like, you gotta stop going in the shower. And then the doctor says, well, you go in the shower. He's like, yeah, I go in the shower when we're done with practice. You're not even in practice. And I don't stay in there for an hour. What are you doing in there?
Right.
Right, let alone what he did to the kids in private training area, which is much worse. So it's amazing to me that it was just accepted. It's just like, hey, there's perverts who like to, and that's the least you could say about them, who like to molest the young students. And some of us talk to him about it and tell him not to do it. And Jim Jordan apparently decided not to be one of those guys. He just said, don't touch me. Now look, how guilty is Jim Jordan? Is this a thing that he should resign over? Look, generally with conservative voters, they don't care about hypocrisy at all. So I'd be shocked if they cared about this. My guess is they're all saying, that was a long time ago, just leave him alone. To me, I think it's actually not an easy question. It's easy for progressives to say, throw him to the wolves, but he didn't do it. And apparently at the time, it was totally accepted that you just allow this type of stuff to happen, because it's not like he was the only one. The administrators knew about it, the coach warned them, and they didn't do anything. So look, one thing that is absolutely clear, there needs to be consequences today so that it doesn't happen in the future. Because unless you're mental, nobody thinks that this is acceptable. Now, I know, but politics gets so crazy that the Republicans will say, I don't care when it comes to Jim Jordan, right?
Yeah.
But do we go back 20 years and then say, okay, anybody who didn't do anything back then now has to be fired from whatever job they're in today? I think that's a difficult question.
Well, I think it's a difficult question, but answering that question becomes easier depending on what that job is. If you are a US representative, you are in a position of power that's incredibly important, right? And so if you are willing to sit back and remain complicit in this type of abuse, molestation, sexual assault, I don't believe that you're fit to serve as a US senator, as a US representative, as anyone in any type of position of power, right? Because look, the role of the government is to represent and protect its people. And if he can't protect, people who do not have any position of power, students in vulnerable positions or situations like this, then how can you trust him to protect the American people in his position of power? So look, for me, it doesn't matter. This goes beyond politics. I don't care if it's a Republican or a conservative or a liberal, progressive, Democrat, doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is whether or not this person takes their job and their responsibility seriously. And if it's proven that he was complicit in this, I don't think that he should serve in any position of power.
And finally, another thing that is absolutely clear is based on the testimony of several different ex-wrestlers from Ohio State, Jim Jordan knew. And so now when he's saying, oh, the guy whose locker was right next to mine, the one I warned about not touching me, oh, he was touching all the other boys that told me, some of them said, yeah, I told Jim Jordan, hey, can you help me, right? And you think all those wrestlers are lying for no reason when they actually really like Jim Jordan?
And they're on the record. So I want to give you one other example. So let's go to graphic 11. This is another former wrestler who said nice things about Jim Jordan, right? So he says the following: I remember I had a thumb injury and went into Strauss's office and he started pulling down my wrestling shorts. I'm like, what the F are you doing? And I went out and told Russ, that was the head coach, and Jim, assistant coach, what happened. I was not having it. They went in and talked to Strauss. So that's, again, another former wrestler who's on the record by name saying, I went to Jim Jordan myself and told him what was going on, and he took some action. He went and spoke to Strauss. So I don't know.
I don't know if his voters will ever care. I don't know if conservatives will care.
Well, his voters aren't going to care,
yeah,
right?
But at a bare minimum, he's definitely lying.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your active ID more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
It's devastating. Okay, we got to take a quick break. So when we come back, more news of the day, including a story that enrages me. A federal judge essentially says that Americans have no right to literacy.
You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Johnny the Rogue Nerd writes in on Twitter, just became a member today and got 2 shirts, the Young Turks tank, the one you were wearing on Friday. Well, or your version of it, and Nerd Alert, which is awesome. Looking forward to membership, good stories and good times. Awesome, Johnny, welcome. TYT.com/join to become a member. JR and I had fun, potentially hilarious post game yesterday. Talked about back when I was a conservative. And we talked about a lot of different things, but it was great. So if you're a member, please check that out. I think you'll enjoy it. The liberal mom says, I'm sorry, but BS. People went after Joe Pa for knowing about Sandusky and actually telling the board of directors if he knew, Jim Jordan, told no one and nothing happens. That is messed up. So, all right, fair. Good comment. Now we got more for you.
All right. A new report indicates that people living on military bases throughout the country were consuming drinking water that had a chemical that could lead to serious health consequences, including liver cancer, liver disease, I should say, weight gain, and also cancer. So this is a report that the Trump administration tried to prevent the release of. But now that it has been released, unfortunately, no one's really talking about it. And it disproportionately impacts our military members who live on military bases with their families, because some of the materials that they use in their training contains this chemical and it seeps into their drinking water. So a division of the Department of Health and Human Services quietly published its 852-page review of PFAS, which are used in everything from carpets and frying pan coatings to military firefighting foams. Now, the military firefighting foams is exactly what is seeping into the drinking water. This is something that they use during their training exercises, and the foam does make its way into the water. So people, the report offers the most comprehensive gathering of information on the effects of these chemicals and suggests that they're actually far more dangerous than previously thought. So back in the day, the US government said, all right, if there are 70 parts per trillion of this chemical in the water, then anything past that is unsafe. It could lead to serious health consequences. However, after studying it further, they found that it's actually much lower, 7 to 11 parts per trillion. So A, the previous studies were wrong, and B, now we know that there's a lot more of this chemical in the drinking water that's disproportionately impacting our soldiers. And the Trump administration tried to hide the data about it because they wanted to avoid a PR nightmare. What the Trump administration didn't realize is that the mainstream media doesn't care about these kinds of stories and doesn't report on these kinds of stories. So they didn't have to worry about the PR nightmare. But we're at least reporting on it.
So there's a part of this story which I feel a little embarrassed by, because this doesn't happen that often, but I was naive about this one. I legitimately did not understand it. I was like, well, look, it's not a thing that the Trump administration created, so it's actually fairly easy to say, oh, well, man, it wasn't me. This has been going on for decades. So, in fact, Trump could go over the top and go, it's Obama's fault. It was a mess. What you did to the military base. And it actually isn't Obama either. It's that they just restudied the issue and realized that it was much worse than they originally anticipated, and it goes back decades covering Republican and Democratic presidents. So why in the world do you delay? So I thought, well, maybe they just don't want to pay for it, and they're going to.
That is a part of it.
And sure, and I'm sure it is a little part of it, but it's a small part of it because at some point you got to release the study, and you got to start paying anyway. And then Emily Atkin at the New Republic made a point where I was like, oh right. So the people who made this chemical are, of course, part of a corporation that could potentially be donors. So that 6-month delay buys them time to prepare their case for the eventual lawsuits, gets them a huge jump start. Now, look, we don't know if there are any memos between Pruitt and those companies yet. By the way, we do know Pruitt is erasing the people he met with. That's a story out today as well in the news. And remember, he built a $43,000 soundproof telephone booth in his office because he didn't want people to find out who he was talking to. So it is a very fair question who he was talking to, but at least that made rational sense. I was like, right, excellent point. Like, what? Because in that 6 months, there's still people having kids in that area, military people, right? And people that we should care about. Look, we should care about everybody equally, but the Republicans and a lot of politicians make a huge deal about how much they care about the veterans and supporting the troops. They know that they're being poisoned in those areas on 126 military facilities, right? And they let them drink the water anyway because they got to give a heads up to their donors. Oh, it's sick, man.
So, look, as you mentioned, this has been an ongoing problem, and there was faulty science to begin with, and then now we have the real data, and we now know why the Trump administration is trying to, or at least tried to, stop the release of this data. So not only do we put our soldiers' lives at risk with preemptive wars or intervening or meddling in other wars that other countries have started, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, for instance. We're also risking their lives and their health with dirty water. So tell me something, what's more disrespectful to our troops and to our veterans? Is it quietly kneeling during the national anthem to protest a serious issue in the country? Or is it more disrespectful to risk their lives in multiple ways?
So I know what some conservatives will be like, oh yeah, like you guys care about the troops.
Yeah, I do actually care about the troops. Because for me, the troops are not props, right? The troops are used and exploited as props by the right wing, right? Support the troops, because in reality, when they say support the troops, it means support the war that we're sending our troops to. So our private contractors can make some money, right? That's what they do. When they say, no, you gotta respect our soldiers and stand for the national anthem, it's basically a dog whistle regarding race relations in the country. That's what it's really about. They're always used as props. People who really care about the troops should be outraged that they've been drinking this contaminated water, which leads to these terrible diseases, cancer, birth defects. This is the kind of stuff that they should be concerned about, but they're not. No one's talking about this.
Well, look, maybe this will get conservatives' attention. Not only increased risk of cancer, but disruption in hormones and the immune system. So, for all the right-wing people that were talking about, hey, I think there's something wrong with the hormones. Yeah, if it's not because people want to turn frogs gay, and it's not, it's not Pepsi, and it's not any of these lunatic conspiracy theories, and it's not on purpose. What it is, as usual, a corporation who wanted to make money didn't take enough care. But by the way, also government bureaucrats who then cover it up for different reasons, whether it's to protect the donors and the corporations, or it's to protect their own ass because they don't want people to find out that they'd been screwing up, right? There are logical, real reasons for it, but when you talk, at least it might get the right wing's attention, like, wow, hormone issues, I knew it, that's the real problem. Well, actually, there are sometimes problems, but there's real answers to why, and this is why. And unfortunately, in this case, the Trump administration was covering it up. And lastly, on the back to the troops, the right wing really believes this, and that's why it's amazing to me. They're like, we support the troops, that's why we want to send them to war to die, whereas you guys care about their health care. Yeah, we do. We want them to have health care and to not get cancer and to not die in senseless wars.
Exactly. I don't want them to do multiple deployments to the Middle East so military contractors can make money. I don't want that. I actually want to save their lives and not send them to unnecessary wars, and then also have them come back with mental health issues because they've been deployed so many times, and then deny them adequate health coverage. I mean, that's essentially what's happening to them. So let's stop using our soldiers as props. Let's stop exploiting them and actually take action to care for them, because that's not what's happening on a federal level. And it's honestly disgusting. I mean, first of all, it's disgusting if anyone in the United States, one of the richest countries in the world, is exposed to contaminated drinking water. But apparently this is it's become a pattern. It's become something to expect here in the US.
Far too common. It's way past time that we do something about it. If we could find money for trillions of dollars of tax cuts for the rich, we could find money to actually take care of our troops.
All right, well, Scott Pruitt is the head of the EPA. Doesn't really seem to have a lot of interest in protecting the environment, has a lot of interest in using taxpayer money for all sorts of things, including tactical pants, which we'll get to later. But Kristen Mink actually saw Scott Pruitt having lunch at a restaurant and decided to respectfully approach him and speak to him about why she believes he should resign. Take a look.
Hi, I just wanted to urge you to resign because of what you're doing to the environment in our country. This is my son. He loves animals. He loves clean air. He loves clean water. Meanwhile, you're slashing strong fuel standards for cars and trucks for the benefits of big corporations. You've been paying about $50 a night to stay in a DC condo that's connected to an energy lobbying firm while approving their dirty sands pipeline. We deserve to have somebody at the EPA who actually does protect our environment, somebody who believes in climate change and takes it seriously for the benefit of all of us, including our children. So I would urge you to resign before your scandals push you out.
Okay, that's how you do it.
Yes.
So not anything physical at all, obviously, not even shouting.
She didn't even raise her voice. That was the calmest, interaction that I've seen between two people who obviously disagree with one another quite a bit.
Right, and that's a government official. You know what that means? They work for us. They are supposed to represent us. And she calmly went over and said, you're supposed to protect the environment for my son and for all of us, and you're doing the opposite. Can you stop, please? Can you actually turn around? And I think that's just nearly perfect. And it makes him a little uncomfortable. I get it. And his, colleague, I don't know if that's a fellow government worker or if that's a lobbyist with Pruitt, 8 out of 10 times it's a lobbyist or a corporate executive that he's dining with. But if they're a little uncomfortable that somebody that they're representing, and I'm sure they don't see it that way, but someone that they're representing is unhappy with their work, well, we chalk that one up to sad day for you.
Right, I mean, the go-to action that people are encouraged to take if they disagree with what a politician is doing is to call that person or email that person.
No, come on.
But that's usually the excuse that's used if you just want to ignore what that person has to say, whatever criticism, whatever concern. You're right, Cenk, these are people who work for us. These are people who are supposed to represent the American people. And Pruitt has done the exact opposite. He's done nothing but represent himself, benefit himself. He's spent so much money, taxpayer money, on ridiculous things. I mean, there's the $43,000 phone booth that he installed in his office. I'm not kidding, he bought tactical pants. I don't even know what he would use tactical pants for. He spent.
I find that hilarious. He spent $1,500, $1,500. I don't know how you do shopping, but to me, spending $1,500 on pants is amazing. But
they're tactical.
But they're tactical, and I really don't know what kind of tactics his pants are using. Okay, but for $1,500, that better be excellent tactics. Okay, the pants go, hey, you know what? Now meet with the next lobbyist. Okay, so
$100,000 to go on a trip to Morocco to visit a longtime pal of his.
no, that pal, by the way, of course, another person connected to the donors, and he went to Morocco and pushed that company's agenda on our dime. He spent $100,000 of our money to go push that corporate agenda because of the corruption that he's involved with.
It was an energy company in the United States that has been pushing Pruitt to essentially do lobbying work for them. So he went to Morocco and took up this meeting to encourage them to buy from this energy company, this US energy company.
And he thinks you don't have a right to any of this information, and that's why he's erasing his records as we speak. In his time as Attorney General of Oklahoma, would go and take literally copy and paste from lobbyist memos and put it into law in Oklahoma, because all he cares about is representing the donors. He'd use those same people to raise a lot of money for the Republican Party and get themselves reelected. Look, when members of the Young Turks come up to me publicly, a lot of times they'll be very nice, I appreciate it. And sometimes they'll have critique, and legitimate critique. Hey, I like this host more, I don't like the other one, or you're doing this, or I wish you'd cover that more.
Yeah, focus on what they say about you.
Okay. Well, they're my boss, because the members make this show possible. By the way, tyt.com/join to become a member. And they get to voice their opinion. They get to they're the ones that pay for all this to happen. So we pay Scott Pruitt's salary, and he's. I know that it seems hilarious at this point and also tragic, but his job, his literal job, is to protect our environment. I mean, he is doing nothing of the sort. He is allowing the polluters to run wild, run amok. He's stripping regulations away, allowing for more pollution to go into your waters and certainly into our air. It's not just climate change, it's literal toxic stuff going into your nearby streams. The least you could do is go up to him and tell him you disagree politely, as she did. They couldn't be more polite. I thought that was perfectly handled.
Yes. Look, I think that it's okay to raise your voice a little more if you want to, if you're passionate about it. But I think it is important to voice your concerns, and you should never, for the billionth time, resort to any type of physical violence, and no one has so far, and I hope no one will. But it is important to practice your First Amendment right and speak out regarding the issues that you feel passionately about. All right, we have another Pruitt story, and this one is quite a doozy. What is he doing to undermine Jeff Sessions? And also, what are the latest scandals that he's involved in? Come back after the break and I'll tell you all the details.
Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening either way. There's gonna be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you wanna get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.